At finehomebuilding.com, we've taken our 40 years of experience publishing an expert-written magazine for architects, designers, builders, remodelers, and do-it-yourselfers, and used it to build the best online membership available to anyone interested in high-quality, high-performance homes. With an all-access membership, you can read 40 years of FHB print issues, watch hundreds of in-depth how-to videos, follow the annual FHB house build, plan your next project with our new project guides, and much more. Visit finehomebuilding.com to sign up for All Access, the most important tool in your toolbox.
And even in Antarctica, like, it's not as many. Like, we had as many people named Dan as we did females, but it's still more than what's in industry at large, which is honestly abysmal.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast, our regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Carpenter Laura Smarrito. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding Podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. Laura, thank you so much for being on the show. It is a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So you wrote into Fine Homebuilding with a tip that we ran in issue 303 regarding how to put a bevel on a wide board, right, for like a threshold or some other application. And I learned through that process that you were in Antarctica. No, excuse me, you were in Greenland, but you've also worked in Antarctica. And I found that fascinating. So I'm delighted to talk to you. Can you tell me first how you became a carpenter?
Well, kind of in a roundabout process. I mean, I was super interested in carpentry, like, as a young person, but my first job out of high school was like working in an art studio in a framing shop. And so my boss there, like, he taught me a lot about doing handwork and also just like how to be a good employee and how to like organize yourself to work well. And he would also set me up with little jobs like building frames to stretch canvas on or things like that. And he let me keep my saw in his studio. So I kind of got a taste for doing
Did
work
you
like
find you
that.
had an aptitude for it, or was it a struggle?
No, yeah, it was definitely felt natural to me. I think like I'm mostly self-taught. So it has been a struggle, like learning on your own, but yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, it felt like something that came natural to me in a way.
But
Yeah.
then you went on to go to college, right?
I went to Drexel for mechanical engineering. I had been working for a while doing like odd jobs and doing like small carpentry things. Um I worked for one guy who was just like amazing, really good at everything he does kind of guy, and he was renovating his house, and he would just give me tasks that were, he'd just be like, "Oh, can you do this?" And I'd be like, "No, I don't know how." And he's like, "Yeah, you'll figure it out. It'll be fine." And I was like, "Okay." And then I just did. And so that was a lot of my like learning process. But then eventually I did go back to school for mechanical engineering. And I still find it very interesting, and I thought it was a very useful skill set.
Did you have how did the math go in the engineering program? Was that easy for you, or was that hard work?
It was hard. Yeah, no, I mean, I chose it specifically because it was hard. I was like, let me see if I can I'll like pick the hardest thing that I feel like I'm interested in. So I was like, I'm gonna choose mechanical engineering. And yeah, and it was difficult, but it made sense to me, and I enjoy math, and I enjoy like the puzzle aspect and the like planning aspect of doing the physics and doing the math.
Were you doing carpentry work while you were going to school?
Yeah, yeah.
Did your professors know that you were doing that kind of work? Were they interested?
I don't think they knew. Yeah, it's kind of a big school.
Well,
Like,
I've heard engineering professors say that their students often have no experience with mechanical things that would have given them a leg up in a previous generation because they might have grown up on a farm or had a family member who was handy or a tradesperson. That many kids who end up in college now don't have that experience.
yeah.
Did
Yeah,
you find?
oh, sorry. I definitely think that that is commonly the case. But having a background in like fixing trucks and working on houses and things like that, I had some context like to draw from.
You told me that you got in a bio I read that you got a table saw at the age of 16. Was that a family present, or did you buy that on your own? How did you end up with a table saw at 16, and did you know how to use it?
Well, um, I bought it. Yeah, I bought it with my own money from like my first job. Um, yeah, I think the first two things I bought were like a table saw and a sewing machine. And yeah, I kept them both in my bedroom. Uh, but I didn't know necessarily how to use it, but I read the manual and I had something I wanted to build, and so I just started building it. Yeah, I mean, I think like I was looking back on it, I probably wish that someone would have showed me like the safety procedures because now I train people all the time on like how to use a table saw. And yeah, there's like, there's some things that I did that I probably wouldn't want to do today.
Yeah, sure. Did you have people that you saw doing this kind of work? I mean, I've always said that you don't know if you like something if you've never been exposed to it, but you just
Mhm.
seem to have this inclination, or am I reading something more into that?
I didn't like I think some of my friends' family did um did construction, did contracting work, but and I like would go we would go over my one friend's family's house to like they'd have like work days on Saturdays or Sundays and get everyone to do a little something around the house. So I would go help them, but not not a ton. I was honestly like very influenced by like a series of young adult novels where like the main character ends up working on boats, like being like a ship was sort of like restoring old sailboats and like there's just like a lot of imagery of her buying tools and buying tools used and like fixing them up and honing them. And so it's like I think like as a young person it's like feels like more accessible because you're like, oh, like I can get tools at a yard sale.
Yeah.
Whereas like I don't know, I watched a lot of this old house and things like that, and that's like not as accessible I think for like a young woman to be like, oh, like I'm gonna magically like get all these really expensive tools. I'm like,
Yeah, and have people pay you to work on their house, right? And
yeah.
yeah, it's not the same. So, how does one end up doing carpentry work uh, on Greenland and in Antarctica?
Ooh, I mean, you apply,
To
but
who?
it I mean, it's yeah, it's see, I had first learned about it many years ago when I saw an ad on Craigslist where they were looking for a janitor. I think I applied to that, but I never heard anything back, and then I totally forgot about it. I think they changed contractors, so I lost track of who to apply through. Um, but then my partner had said that they had applied and got waitlisted the year before, and they were intending to apply again. I was like, yeah, I'll give that a shot. Like, it sounds awesome. And for some reason, I was always interested in going to Greenland, and I knew there was some connection. So I just applied, and um, yeah, I got the job. I mean,
So, who were you working for, and what kind of work were you doing?
you're working for like it's all under the umbrella of the National Science Foundation because it's like a research base.
Mhm.
There's and like Antarctica is like kind of not owned by anyone. It's kind of like a shared territory between all the nations, and So like the only thing that's happening down there is like scientific research. Um, so our shop is like we do science support. So we get to do kind of some pretty cool things because we'll set up the camps in the remote field sites. So we usually be one of the first people on the ground. There's like another organization that kind of is the camp management staff, but between the two of us, we'll be like the first on the ground, and we'll set up these like massive like pallet pack tents and like heaters and um so like we're able to support them to like be in pretty far out locations.
How are you getting that stuff out into the field?
Some of it is dropped on, like some of it we get there from a small plane. Some of it, like depending how close it is, like we'll get out there on a helicopter, so we'll sling load it and drop it off. And then some of it gets traversed. If like one of the sites, it like a lot of the equipment got traversed, so they have like these big tractors basically with with like the tracks, I guess, rather than big wheels. Um, and they just drag everything.
And what I saw in your Instagram feed, which is fantastic, by the way, we should tell folks what is your handle on Instagram so they can see these photos.
Oh, I don't even know. I think it's Lil Smarrito. It's just Lil Smarrito.
I'll put a link on the podcast page for sure
Okay,
too, so
thanks.
folks can see. But it looked like you were building this, at least in Greenland, this like hexagonal research structure. Is that correct? It looked like it was multi-sided.
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know what. Yeah, I'm not sure which you're talking about. I don't think we are. Like
Okay,
we were building like there's these like utility vaults and there's like a cover for them that's a hexagon or it's an octagon really. But
that's what I'm thinking of then. So what is that for?
it's just there's like they'll run utilities like underground through the snow, and so that's like an access. It's like a have you ever seen like the video game Super Mario? It's like a pipe that goes into the ground.
Uh-huh. Like a culvert, except it's vertical.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And so like tools and stuff, do you have to like airlift that in too? How's that work?
Well, yeah, there's so in Greenland there's like a permanent site or like a semi-permanent site. So all of our tools are there already and they'll bring in more on the plane if we need like, they'll bring in resupply and um like on these cargo planes. But for the most part, like when we're working on the station in Antarctica, we have like all those tools. That's been a station since like the 40s, maybe 40s or 50s. Is an old Navy base, and so the Navy had brought in a lot of like really nice big tools, on ships, and
You're talking like machinery, like shop machinery, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, and then they'll bring like things come in on planes or on a resupply vessel. But to the camps, yeah, we pack our own tools, and there's a pretty advanced like cargo system that happens. I mean, and we when we go to the camps that are helicopter supported, we pack our own tools. Like you get used to like weighing your tool bags and marking your weights, and like you have weights for all your materials and things like that.
So you're limited to a certain number of pounds or kilograms
Mhm.
before they'll let you on the helicopter. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean it's generous, but it's like, and they can if you can't, they can make multiple runs and they'll they'll sling load. Like we'll sling load big crates and bring them out.
What do you do when you forget something?
Uh, you know, I'm an overpacker. Like every time I'll go out, my foreman will be like, "Oh, you just need this, this, or that," and I'll be like, "You think I need this?" And they'll be like, "Nah." And then anytime they say you don't need something, I bring two because I always need, especially if a tall person's like, "Oh, we won't need a ladder." I'm like, "We're gonna need a ladder." You might have to pay a ladder, but I need a ladder.
What like So are you building things? Are you assembling things? Are you fixing things? Are you doing all these things?
Yeah, it's a big variety. I mean, some of the like the more remote camps is mostly like it's like tents and it's soft-sided structures, and they're getting put up in the beginning of the season and taken down in the end of the season. Sometimes they're like stored on site on like a berm. Sometimes they're brought back. Some of the camps are more permanent, like, and so you're doing more like maintenance, repair, or like you'll have a special building project that you'll be doing out there. But it really
Is it
depends.
to like keep the buildings operating, or is it to make life more livable for the folks who are working there?
A little of both. I mean, yeah, it's like you're in the middle of nowhere and there's no. But it's like it's not like being in the wilderness, like in Canada or something, where there's like trees and animals and plants and things that you could, if you got stranded, you could survive if you were clever. It's like you get stranded, like you can maybe drink some water if you can melt some snow, but there's nothing there.
So
So
what motivates someone to want to do this? It sounds brutal.
it's not bad. It's not too bad. It's like I guess I mean it's an interesting challenge. I always like things that are like a little different. It's because you have to plan a little better than you might for any job where you can just like run to the store and like you have different sets of limitations. Like you're kind of at the mercy of weather a lot. You have to be you're cautious of like wind and the like volcanic rock is wears on things. So you're and things are getting like what do you call that? Combat offloaded off of planes or like dropped off like not dropped but like sling loaded from a helicopter. So they're getting like knocked around. So you just have like a different kind of sense of how you build things and you might build things here. And and you're also like when it is super because sometimes it is pretty cold and like
Like how cold?
this year we're in Greenland a little later in the season than we normally are, but it would be like towards the end it was getting pretty bad. Like it'd be like negative 45 or so, like ambient, like negative 70 with the wind chill, and that's a little much for me. Like up to like negative 20, I'm like fairly comfortable all the time, but like after that, it gets cold to the point where you can't like you always have to have your face completely covered, and then but then it it's a whole thing. You have to like balance like not fogging up your glasses because if they fog up, then they freeze over, and then you're just like wandering around with this like wet frozen face mask and like frozen goggles. Like, I can't, but I mean, at that point, you like plan as much as you can to do like and figure out how to execute doing work outside as like little as possible. So you like assemble all your bolts and things inside and have everybody knows what they're doing, and you just like go 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 like, and then you come inside and warm up like quite a lot. But once it gets below a certain temperature, it's hard to.
It must make things take a lot longer, right? I mean, that's what I remember about cold weather carpentry work was that it was slow.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. It's Yeah, everything does take longer because you're dealing with cold wind. Like when you have nice days, it's frankly balmy. It's like when the sun is out, and if the sun is out and it's like 0 degrees, like that's pleasant. If the is out and it's like 20 degrees, you feel like absolutely tropical. And you can you get a lot done, and you're moving snow. You're always just like hustling, and so like you're staying warm because you're
Hmm.
moving constantly.
I get it. Yeah. So, what kind of other tradespeople are represented in one of these bases or camps? Are they all carpenters? Are there other specialties like plumbers and electricians and HVAC folk?
Yeah, we have plumbers, electrician, like well, yeah, down south in Antarctica, it's a huge base. There's a number of electricians and a number of plumbers, sheet metal workers, like um, I guess like utility mechanics, they call them, not necessarily HVAC per se,
Hmm.
because they kind of work on a little bit of everything. Um, but so there it's like pretty big trade shop. Um, but up north it's a little bit. You have like one or two plumbers and like one electrician, and then you have the trades helpers. I mean, it's quite a bit more bare bones there, and it's a small camp. It's like 25, 30 people max. So
Do they help you like know what kind of workwear to have? I mean, like the stakes are high. You could really get seriously injured,
yeah,
and if you do, I'm sure it's a big deal.
yeah. I mean, they you get issued like cold weather gear, um, which is like for the most part it's pretty good. You This is like an industry wide problem, but like they always issue men's clothing regardless of whether or not you're a man. Which they would never do it the opposite. They would never issue everybody women's clothing across the board. But
I think
so
you're
it's
right
like,
about that. Yeah.
yeah, you're like, you just need to eat more ham and fill it out a little bit. But yeah, so it's like it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't quite fit right. So I end up like bringing kind of my own. I have my own like system that works pretty good. But yeah, they issue you a lot of clothing, and you just wear a lot of layers and keep your face covered, and you're pretty good.
Are there other women that you're working with? I bet you're in the minority.
Surprisingly, so you are a little bit like down south. I think the overall station population is about like 70-30 male to female, and that will fluctuate depending on the season. Um, so you are in the minority, but in Greenland it's a lot better, and they like specifically aim to have a little more uh equity in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and So yeah, they aim more towards 50% and they get there. And we actually have a fair amount of like female trades workers that work in our shop. Um and even in Antarctica, like it's not as many. Like we had as many people named Dan as we did females, but it's still like it's still more than what's in industry at large, which is honestly abysmal, but
Right, it is. What do we do about that, Laura? You know,
well, what do you think?
I don't know.
I
I think
mean,
having people like you on the program helps a little, but like how many young women are listening to this? You know, unfortunately, not too many. But I think seeing people who can make a career in trade work is probably the best thing to do for increasing, inclusivity and diversity in trades.
yeah. But what do you think like what do you think the industry is doing right now and has been doing that is preventing that?
I think it's just always been male dominated, and I think that's unfortunate. I I think it's a tough thing to turn around, and men aren't very receptive to helping women get into the business.
Yeah. I mean, the reality I think is that like people are still very explicitly discriminating. I
Hmm.
mean, I have had friends who have been trying to get into carpentry and have been told like, no, we don't hire women in the year 2020. Like I have been told that in the past, you know. Yeah, I've like that's a big I mean, that's a big contributor. Like you're not wanted in the industry. I mean, and I think at the end of the day, I've worked with women trade workers, and they have been like they're some of the best carpenters I've ever worked with. They're just like forces to be reckoned with. Incredibly strong, incredibly hardworking, and incredibly like talented and focused. Um, and so it's like we're doing this work and we're doing a good job and we want to do it because we're interested. I think it's like it ends up not actually being the reason that we're not wanted in this field is not about the work itself, because we're here and we're doing it and we're kicking ass. But So if we can just like maybe focus on the work itself and like I think we'd be able to make a make some changes, hopefully.
Hopefully. I uh, I hope that the folks who listen to this will take your words to heart and be kind and helpful to anyone who wants to do this work, because God knows we need it done, and I think the industry would benefit from being more inclusive.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, like, uh, I want to ask you more about like what happens if you get hurt in one of these camps or in one of these bases. Like, I remember a friend of mine who worked for Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute and went to
Oh, yeah.
Antarctica, and
Oh, well,
he
yeah.
hurt his arm drilling a hole in the ice, and it was a big deal. What happened? Have you ever had an injury? Do you know anyone who's had an injury, and what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, so I think like the main thing is prevention. Like that's our main focus. Like you keep in mind that like help could be like help could be weeks away depending on weather because like we can't move, you can't fly in certain conditions. Um and like especially if you're in the remote camps the weather sometimes is really unpredictable. So you just have that in mind. It's like you you like don't risk it when you're like, I could just do this real quick. You're like, nah, not gonna do that.
Yeah.
And honestly, that attitude is like carried through for me being home because even though like I'm probably like 15 minutes max away from any hospital, it's like, do I want to have my finger sewn back on? No, I'm gonna like,
Right. That really breaks up your day.
yeah, I'll be mad. Yeah.
Have you seen anyone get hurt, and like what did you have to do?
Let's see. Have I seen anyone get hurt? No. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a lot like we have one all the camps is or the bigger camps. There's like a medic who's there all the time, so you have at least like kind of triage, like first aid stuff. There's a lot of people who have their like wilderness first aid certifications that you just like they'll just be other carpenters or other trades workers or like logistics staffs, and they just happen to have that from their life. And so they'll do like emergency response training, especially in Greenland. They do a lot of like emergency response training. Um, so I don't think I have seen anyone get hurt, not seriously anyway. But like I usually have like band-aids and Neosporin in my pocket because there's so many. It's so dry there, that like your hands
Yeah.
crack, and then
Yeah.
you also get splinters really easily because the wood is really dry. So I would just carry that.
The hand cracks are awful, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah, yeah.
So what's it like, after living this very exciting life, in the wilderness or, in the frigid conditions, what's it like when you get back to Philadelphia? Do you find the same stimulation you get from carpentry in the field, far afield?
I mean, like I think it makes you appreciate like trees and plants more, like and having colors and like lots of like interesting smells. But yeah, like the work that I do here is also like pretty varied. And I work on old houses. So I work on houses that are generally like 100 years or older, sometimes closer to 200. And so there's like that's always nothing is ever straightforward, and you never know exactly what you're getting into until you've gotten into it. You can like start to predict, but so it's a lot of interesting problem solving and a lot of like learning about, I don't know, you're still like thinking about weather all the time or like thinking about how something is going to hold up with like moisture and air movement and things like that.
You own your own business, right? And like, do you do kitchen remodels and ordinary stuff like that, or a lot of rot repair decks? What do you do?
I do a lot of different things. I've been doing a lot of like sort of like historic millwork like replacement. I was helping a guy do a bunch of like rebuild a bunch of dormer windows, and he had bought a molding machine. So um we were like
Milling parts?
reproducing.
Yeah.
What's that?
You were like milling the parts for the windows?
Hmm? Yeah,
Wow, cool.
for the trim on the outside of the dormers, and then for like the frames for the windows. So I've been doing a lot of that, and doing some exterior trim work. Um, but also I do like built-ins and um just all kind like I'll do plaster repair, drywall repair, and I'll do big structural repair, kind of a lot of everything,
Yeah.
which is what I like.
You like to mix it up.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I can tell because I've looked at your portfolio and I don't know how to put it, but you have what I've heard artists describe as a good eye. In short, even your like modest projects, like you did a temporary kitchen for someone, and like it
Mm,
was so classy and cool.
no.
It looked perfectly at home in like someone's loft apartment in New York City. But how do you have you always been artistic? Would you describe yourself as artistic?
Yeah, I guess as a kid, I was super into like drawing and painting and actually fashion design. And I went to Moore College of Art for these like little programs when I was in high school, which is it's like an art college in Philly. Um, so I do like fashion design and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know, I'm always just like staring at houses and like staring at things and like taking note of the scale of things and their proportions. But it's not, I haven't like studied it per se. It's just kind of like I'll plan it out or draw it out and like be like, okay, that looks right. Or like that looks like it's like out of scale, or like that piece of wood's like a little too fat. So, you know, I don't know.
How do you think one develops that? How like, or is it innate?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like some of it might be like naturally occurring, but also there was like a book I got that was I forget the name of it, but it was on one of those like fine home building like must read book lists, and it's like do this, not that, and it kind of like talks you through like I don't know, like adding columns or different architectural elements that you'll see on like modern houses that look like that doesn't look right. And the book kind of like breaks down like why that doesn't look right. And it's like, well, if you just put them space them like this and scale them appropriately for the, you know, and they'll put like numbers on it. Me, I just kind of like I'm like, okay, make it a little bigger. I'll like make mock-ups, and I'll make, prototypes and stuff like that, and just like take a look at it, and if it looks good, I do it.
Do you like working on your own house? I can tell you when I was a carpenter, one of the things I just did not want to do was do carpentry on the weekends. Like,
Mm.
how's it going there?
Oh, it's good. This is yeah. I mean, I'm a person that like after work, especially in Antarctica, because our shop is awesome. I just like work in the shop and like work on my own projects, and like so I have to stop myself from doing things and be like, all right, you need to take a break
Uh huh.
and like do something else. But I mean, I like it. It's nice to like live in a space that you've kind of created yourself.
Do you own your own home?
Yeah,
Is it what's it like?
it's well, I think we don't know exactly how old it is, but it's a really it's a really kind of interesting house, and it's a standalone, which is fairly rare for this area. Like there's a lot of row houses. But it's like a big, like sort of squarish, like three-story structure in the front that's like 22-inch thick stone walls. And then the back area, which is like the addition, but it got put on like so long ago. It was like not too long after the house was built, and that's all brick. That's all brick structure. But um Yeah, I think it was built in like the 1790s according to the maps, so it's pretty old. And then the roof on the back had been like the roof originally had been like cedar shingles on skip sheathing. And so that, it's built for like a fairly lightweight material. And eventually they put so many layers. Like I don't think they had taken any roofing off since this was built. So there's like 100 layers of roofing on the top roof. And fortunately that was fine, but the back roof, they put rubber roof on top and it collapsed the roof, and then it was, you know, tons of like 5 years more of water damage in the house. So this is actually where we're at now, is the room that had all that water damage. So we reframed the roof. I raised up the walls like 30 inches so that the roof would terminate into the main roof, and we call it like a California, I forget what it's called. But like I raised it so it would terminate at like the right height because it was a really weird thing. Then we're gonna put like windows along the roof line. Uh but that's a whole thing.
So were you living in the place while you were doing all this work?
No, I was living about 10 minutes away.
Uh-huh. And how long did it take you to get it dried in and habitable?
A while. Yeah, it took a while. Well, yeah. One of the things, yeah, I took I had a past life framing nailer fall on my head at some point early in the framing process. So I
Dude,
had like a concussion that I was recovering from.
gosh.
And yeah. So when you're trying to do like you're trying to like join two roofs and like figure out angles on two planes like regularly, I think it's difficult. But it was definitely very like difficult with a head injury. Like, okay.
So will you go back next summer to Greenland or somewhere else? What's the plan?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I like that. Yeah, I like working with that company a lot. Our crew is always really good. I would, yeah, I definitely want to keep working with them. I think it's a really great program, and we have a lot of fun. We work hard, and
So,
we have
so
fun.
when will you go, or when would you go?
June
And when
probably.
June? And you
Yeah.
came back in the end of September, right?
hmm It depends. It depends on the season. Everything got moved around this year because of the COVID. So the season was a little later because we had to do like an extensive quarantine and all that.
When you
So,
got there?
mm, like before
Yeah.
we flew from, because we'll fly with the Air National Guard. So before we all get on a plane together, they quarantine us, and then we get to the sea or to sea level to like a little town, and then we'll quarantine there for a few days. And then by the time we're at camp, like we'll have like multiple tests, so they know nobody has any kind of COVID. And the upside is that none of us got any kind of like colds or anything either the whole time we were there.
Because you guys were quarantined, yeah, ahead of time.
Yeah, because that's definitely like a thing in Antarctica. Because you'll have people come in, like at least before COVID times, like there's always like people coming in and out, and then you have like a closed population. So whatever anyone's bringing, like everybody gets.
What's it like to be around, like in a native village in Greenland? What's it look like? What are the people interested in what you're doing? Do they have any way of communicating with you?
Well, in Greenland, we are not near any people.
Yeah.
We are on the middle. We're at a camp called Summit, and it's like the middle of the ice sheet. So like nobody is anywhere near us. Like, and it would probably be concerning if somebody did show up because it's in the middle of nowhere.
Mm.
Um, but like we'll come into the coast, and to a not, it's not quite on the coast. It's like down a little fjord, but it's like the main airport in Greenland, and they have like little stores in that. It's just it looks like a small little town. It's I think there's like 200 people that live there, 200 or 500. year round. It's just like a small little town. It's not unusual, you know. Yeah. And there's like native Greenlanders that live there, and there's some Danish people, and you know,
Is
the
stuff
air
insanely expensive? Like, is there like any tourism?
Yeah, there's tourism. Yeah, it's a big yeah, there's the from that city, there's the I think it's called the Arctic Circle Trail, which I haven't done yet, but I want to. I have friends that did it because it goes from because we fly into Kangerlussuaq, and then you can take the Arctic Circle Trail to a city that's on the coast itself called Sisimiut, and that's supposed to be beautiful. Um, but yeah,
Is that a
yeah,
hiking trail?
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah. Things are not as expensive as they're not as expensive as you would believe when you consider like the amount of where you are and the amount of effort it takes to get things there. There's like I forget like they had raspberries in the store and they were like $6, which is like not bad. It's like
I
I
would
wouldn't
agree. Because they're
yeah.
4 here in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Right? Wow.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite part of that whole experience? What would make you do that again, or what made you do it the first time?
I mean, I guess just being able to go somewhere I haven't been before um was was cool, but I always really liked like the work camp environment where it's like you get there and you're there to work and you spend a lot of your time working, but you spend like a lot of time like kind of in close quarters with people and you get to know people really well and you have a lot of fun. But then when the day like when your work day is over, there's not like a million other things that you have to do like when you're at home. Like then you can just read a book or like do a crossword or like work on a hobby or like just play cards or something like that. It's not the same like you have a chance to breathe a little more. And then you have a chance to like be really social in I think a pretty positive way. So
It has been a pleasure talking to you, Laura. Is there anything you want to ask or tell our listeners before we go?
I don't know. Yeah. I know it's been great. Thanks for having me. Yeah. I mean,
I've loved talking to you, and I loved hearing about your experiences. It's amazing.
oh yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah.
So what's next? What are you doing today?
Oh, today I'm starting work on a house for my brother. He's gonna have a baby for the first time. So or his girlfriend is. So I've got to get the house ready before the baby comes.
What are the projects on the list?
Um a lot of just like peeling wallpaper, but I got to redo the bathroom and the kitchen. So that's a big project. But it's a small house. It was my uncle's house. You know, he built in the 50s, so
Cool.
it's
Is
a
this
nice
the first
spot.
remodel of the kitchen and bath?
Possibly.
So there's like Eisenhower pink tile in the bathroom, maybe.
Yeah, it's more like I think it's more like a lot of my uncle was very frugal, and so he would like have me come over and do work for him, and he'd be like, use this Elmer's glue to glue the wallpaper back on, or like I got this paint at the dollar store, so it's like so I got to undo some things, but there's also some elements that are super nice where he built all the cabinets out of out of wood paneling. It's in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey, so it's like it's a really nice, like just kind of remote, pretty area.
Will you stay in the house while you're working on it?
Maybe I'm scared of the dark.
You're not scared to go to Greenland or Antarctica with a bunch of guys, but you're scared of the
it's,
dark.
well, it's like 24 hours of daylight there most of the time. This year we had some darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the city, or I didn't grow up in the city, but I grew up around a lot of people, and I've lived in the city for like 20 years. Um, so I'm used to having like a lot of noises. So then when you're
Mhm.
like in a remote area and there's just like one noise occasionally, you're like,
Well, I hope you will stay in touch, and I'd love to work with you on a feature article for Fine Home Building if you're interested, because I think
yeah.
it would be amazing.
No, I'd love that. That'd be great. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to Laura for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Laura, thank you so much for being on the show. It was really great talking to you.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Stay safe, keep craft alive, be nice to your coworkers.
Yeah.